nice feeling for the privilege it is to be working around this council table and to be able to make decisions for the best interests of our people. May God bless those who are sick in our midst and troubled with loss of loved ones, and pray for that the Spirit may be in our midst. In Jesus Christ's name, amen.
Amen. Okay, we'll call this meeting to order, and we have an agenda in front of us. We'd also like to acknowledge Sandra Devaney, who's going to make a presentation on smart cities, and Shannon Paulson, who's here on behalf of Cardston Victim Services. So, any additions to the agenda? If not, we'll entertain a motion to adopt it. Mayor Kronen, all in favor? Okay. Mrs. Devaney, you have about 15 minutes.
Yeah, I'm a little bit worried about that. I'll do the best I can. Okay, I did send an email that was pretty late that I hoped would give you part of a head start on what I'm going to be talking about. So it was a long weekend. Did anybody have a chance at all to look at it?
I looked at it today.
You did? So you have an idea?
Yeah.
Okay, well that gives me, I can cut out a little bit of maybe some stuff in the beginning here. So this is the link. This is the book that I printed. It's got the local Agenda 21 planning guide. So this is when, from 1996, this has been going 25 years. So these guides that are encouraging communities around the world to create vision committees to redefine their communities, their world, and every aspect of their lives. And so they've been pretty successful. I won't go into some of the introduction that was at the beginning of that book, because you've got it on the email there. But I will go right to, and you have now some local quotes, some quotes from the book that you can look up. It's got the page numbers, so it gives you an idea of some of the points that you might, at least you don't have to research them for yourself. Why do we not hear the word Agenda 21 very much?
They changed the name of it.
Yeah, what did they change it to? They did.
Agenda 30 now.
Exactly. That's right. So we all have heard this before. Okay, so, but it is synonymous with sustainable development. In fact, I was looking at Thomas the Train. Now they have a Thomas the Train that's promoting sustainable development. And one of the stories was, it's better to live in the city. And that link is down now. You can't hear that story anymore. But that's one of the goals of Agenda 21, is to get us off the rural land into the city. And so this is a handout for the UN Global Compact on Migration and Sustainable Development Goals. I handed this out for about 4 months before Trudeau signed on to the compact, December 3rd, 2019. And so I was trying to inform the people then. So I'm going to read a part of this now, if you don't mind. I think you have this in front of you as well. It says that Canada is already implementing the goals of Agenda 21. Bill C-2069 grants power to the environmental minister, not the Minister of Natural Resources, to control our resources. An Ottawa-based body, the Impact Assessment Agency, will determine whether a project is in the public interest after taking into consideration all the environmental, the social, the gender, and climate issues, and then make final recommendations to the government. So we signed on, the US and 13 other countries did not, but that does not matter because this isn't an agreement, a treaty that sets policy. It's just an agreement to apply goals, and anybody can do that. So even if countries haven't signed, pressure continues to be applied, like the Green New Deal that was pushed in the States that had nothing to do with policy or the UN, but it was the goals of the UN. The United Nations of 1948 is not the UN of 2019. The world has experienced a shift of power to the unelected and into a form of participative democracy where global Globally active foundations, international bureaucracies, and non-governmental organizations set the agenda and control participation. Consensus is achieved by manipulating translations, changing voting rules, denying opposition the opportunity to present, and even extending conferences to prevent countries from being able to vote. The UN is spearheading a takeover of sovereign bodies, borders, resources, and policing of all signatory countries, and they're doing it through the UN Global Compact by 2030. To introduce the plan, the Earth Summit Chairman, Marie Strom, which is quoted in the front of this book, current lifestyles and consumption patterns of the affluent middle class involving meat intake, fossil fuels, appliances, air conditioning, and suburban housing are not sustainable. The global problem requires a global solution, right? So if they can get us to feel responsible for every weather-related disaster, they can control us and by extension, the world. But in order to control the facts, only research and only scientists who are willing to confirm the political narrative are getting funding. So the realities of life on this planet in this climate change world, it says that it dictates that continued economic development as we know it cannot be sustained. So while Agenda 21 promotes itself as a development program, in reality is an agenda to dismantle everything that industrial capitalism has given us and replace it with the 3 E's: economic equality, social equality, and community self-reliance, which is protection of the environment. So how does an international body influence the local government to implement these agendas? Well, as you saw in your email, the city hopes to win $50 million in Smart Cities Challenge. So they do it with money. The Open Smart City is where all sectors and residents collaborate in mobilizing the 2 things that we're talking about that makes the city smart: data and technology, to develop their communities through fair, ethical, and transparent governance that do what? The 3 E's: balance, economic development, social progress, and environmental responsibility. So if this is a must read in my opinion. It talks about Agenda 21, but the second page talks about the Alberta Land Stewardship Act and how Agenda 21 is being applied in the Act. And so I'll let you read that at home. I will make one statement here. It's on the 3rd page. It says, the authority to make regulations under the Act is given to the Lieutenant Governor in Council, which Trudeau is using to use most of his passing laws. The guns were taken away by the Lieutenant Governor in Council. So politicians, electoral, Parliament is being dismantled, and everything's being done from the top down from the Lieutenant Governor in Council. She can appoint a minister or board or agency or any combination of these persons to manage whatever is necessary to achieve or maintain the objective or policy, including managing all or part of the cause of an effect, or those matters that affect or that might affect the economy, social objectives, and the environment, or any element thereof, including species. So we're talking like wolves and whales and whatnot. Anyway, so I think that's a very, very important one to read. I hope you can find the time to do that. Just a brief summary of the BC Alberta Land Stewardship Act. It says, just a quote from there, it says, explains the binding nature of these regional plans. They bind the Crown, the local governments. So this is coming from the provincial to the local governments, and decision makers and all other persons. Keith Wilson, he was a lawyer in Edmonton, and he did a video, and he summarized it better than I could, so I'm just going to read part of what he said. He said, it has given the Cabinet through regional plans the power to extinguish land titles, freehold mineral titles, water licenses, grazing leases, development permits, area structure pipelines, subdivision approvals with no opportunity of appeal if your land is designated for change of use or your existing rights taken away. Plus, there will be no compensation given and the courts will have no power to grant you any remedy. This is horrifying. If you actually read this and internalize what it says. So that's the that's the Alberta Land Stewardship Act. So this is happening, guidebooks are happening all over the place, and from the top down, regulating what communities have to do. And there's a group in Calgary that's called, can you give me close to the 5 minutes?
Yeah, I'll let you.
Okay. There's a group in Calgary that's called Common Sense Calgary. They have 47 community associations that participate in there. They monitor every city council meeting. They publicize a newsletter. They tell people who voted, who said what's on the agenda, what's being talked about. And this was something they said about their guidebook for great communities. He said, Calgary's guidebook for great communities is a perfect example of this consultation farce. Even putting aside the challenges of the pandemic, Lisa Kronen, who is the Calgary's legislation and land use bylaw coordinator, was quoted in the media saying, "We haven't done public engagement because we want to do it differently, because the type of engagement we've been working in the past to actually get us to the outcomes hasn't been working to get us to the actual outcomes that we want." Anyone who's ever attended a city consultation understands this quite perfectly. The city failed to get the outcome they wanted from the consultation, so now they need to do the consultation differently to get the correct result. 5 minutes?
5 minutes.
Oh my goodness. The city's public consultation was carefully stage managed and controlled in order to ensure they obtained the results the city wanted to begin with. Okay, so what they call this happening is called decision-based evidence making. In other words, this is a decision we've made. We want citizen input to find the evidence to make it work. Just the same way as they got climate change is real, so they're only going to pay scientists who give the evidence to prove that it is. So they're making the decisions ahead of time and then trying to get us to think it's our idea to implement these things and how we should do it. I don't know where to go from here. Some of the comments that were done at the end of that common sense thing mentioned, like, what is the problem the guidebook's trying to fix? And why is there absolutely no single housing in this program? No more single housing developments are going to be allowed in Calgary anymore. It says that all they get is canned answers, and one of the quotes from the city planners was, "This urban plan is the best urban plan that ever urban planned." So, and they said if they actually took out or added or changed, allowed the single family, and changed the municipal plan that they're being mandated to follow, they would throw away the whole reason that they have for the plan, which is to increase density. So there is a top-down plan to make this all happen. I'll give you 2 quick examples. Calgary has become a smart city. These are the 4 initiatives what are the problems they're trying to fix? 4 initiatives to expand noise pollution and track gun noise. Secondly, to monitor the climate at the Gardens Tropical Horticultural Refuge. To monitor the speeds of golf carts. Okay, these are what they're trying to implement with their data and technologies, and this is what they're coming up with. This is just a game they're playing with us, right? This isn't really what they want to implement. In Kelowna, they did another one. Kelowna want to become the Calgary's first real-world 5G smart city. They did they put up 5G along Bernard. I used to live in Kelowna, so they wanted to monitor the vehicle, pedestrian, and cycle safety. Well, they went in collaboration with Rogers and with UBC students, and they said, what can we do with this technology? Here's the decision, what can we do to make it happen? So they did a little bit of investigation, and I don't have time to go into it, but
You'll
It
need
was-
to wrap it up, Simon.
Pardon?
Your 15 minutes. You'll need to wrap it up. We have another delegation waiting. Couple more minutes.
Okay, well, I'll just end this, I'm almost done, I've only got one more thing here. So to show you that this is current, they have a Smart City Challenge 2021 that ended in February 18th, and this was actually in Washington State. But this is the kind of top-down way they get what they want. Number one, they encourage women and people of colors, and if you read through this elite book, this guidebook, they invite every person that imaginable except white males. And they give grant money, $350,000 in cash, to participate or win if you win the challenge. Here's the sponsors. Refraction is a nonprofit charity. So is Smart Cities, nonprofit charity that got $750,000 from the federal government to implement, to connect companies and the government to bring about this agenda. And they're supposed to be nonprofit, don't pay taxes, they get $750,000 to implement this Agenda 21, basically. It says part of the challenge is that 70% more residents will exist in the physical footprint that we already have. So that's part of the agenda. They're going to have 70% more people move from the country or move into cities, but we don't want any bigger city. So they're going to densify, and all of the regulations are to do that. The last part, and I guess I just got one more minute here, is the fact that they're going to do this what? With data and technology. What is the technology they're going to use? 5G. Okay, after Kelowna came out and said we're going to be the groundbreaker for this, the city complained. They said we don't want 5G in here and all that it's EMF. We don't want that. And so we had to backtrack and say, well, we're not really using 5G. We're using less than that. But 5G is the advertising. So this is what they're doing. They're advertising. And the capability is there to use 60 gigahertz. Now, if we think masking is hard for our children, if social distancing is hard for our children, you put our children in front of a screen 24/7 with EMF and 5G and even just Wi-Fi. They tell you on the back of your phone to stay 9 inches from your body, but you're holding it in your hand. They tell you to keep it away for women, not to put it close to their bodies because it affects their uterus and ovaries and so that's the bottom line here, is that what do we do? Okay, number one, we have to recognize that there are conspiracy theories, but there are also conspiracies. And Agenda 21 is one. It is worldwide. And what can we do? We cannot accept their grant money and their bribery money to implement things that are going to hurt us. And we have to, well, I'll just read the last paragraph from my handout and then I'm done. Okay, if I can find my handout now. Okay, it says, democracy is precious and fragile. We must educate and vote for wise, honorable, and courageous candidates who are not afraid to stand independent, maybe even against their party, to protect us. Then we must hold all others accountable to the rule of law and for their treasonous actions. So what do? We recognize, first of all, where it's coming from, where it's taking us, and then we stand behind moral agency and give us a choice. We don't have a choice if we're surveilled every 30 feet and are tracked 24/7. Everything we do, everything we say can be monitored and put in the cloud. So I will have an email that I can send you with links to the 5G because they're not, it's like other things. We don't do the evidence, we can't say that it's harmful. Well, no evidence is not evidence. So there are links that tell us the consequences of 5G and what it's doing, even though the government refuses to publicize these studies to let us know, or to change their standards from Safety Code 6, which is so ancient it doesn't even take 5G into consideration. Thank you for listening. I appreciate being able to be here. We need to count on each other to protect our children and to recognize the dangers and then pray for what we can do about it. Thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Your first.
My first.
Thank you. And we'll have
Sure.
Mrs. Cardston come on
If you'd like to. Shannon, let's do a quick,
Yep.
the old procedure here. And then we'll sorry, it's just gonna be a little bit down there. But it's,
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for the opportunity to present to you tonight. I understand that Council is aware of Cardston Victim Services in our community and the surrounding area, but I appreciate this chance to refresh your memory and just put in a little bit of a plug to promote the valuable resource that we are to the community members, the ones that are viewing this proceeding tonight. We often think of crime as something that happens to other people. We do not expect to be affected by crime. When a crime occurs that affects us, we are often unsure as to what help is available. In 2015, a victim service unit was established in Cardston and operates out of the RCMP detachment. We follow up the initial police response and provide assistance to victims as their case proceeds through the criminal justice system. Cardston Victim Services is a non-profit charitable organization and has a structure that is overseen by a board of directors who do not work with victims, but provide governance to the program. The hours they dedicate are volunteer and are much appreciated. There are currently 7 members from the community and area on the board, plus an RCMP liaison from the detachment. The program is administered by the program manager with help from volunteer advocates. You may be interested to know that the previous program manager has taken on a new responsibility to organize and implement victim service units in 5 surrounding communities. They are Pincher Creek, Fort McLeod, Brockett, Crow's Nest Pass, and Clare's Home. We appreciate her many dedicated hours of service to this community, along with past and present board members and advocates who volunteer their time. I was a volunteer advocate under the previous program manager for 3 years and have now taken on the responsibility of program manager. We are currently looking for more volunteer advocates to join our team, so any interested parties can contact the Cardston detachment for details. Victim service units provide a link between victims and the criminal justice system to help obtain the services and information they need. Staff will listen to and offer emotional and practical support. Victims may need legal information, counseling, financial assistance, or other services. Staff can provide referrals to the appropriate government or community agencies. We have developed many good relationships with community partners and continue to direct victims to the appropriate resources in our community when possible. If the case goes to court, victim service staff will work with the Crown Prosecutor's Office and the police to answer any questions. We will help prepare and accompany victims to court and ensure they are informed about court dates and the outcome of the proceedings. If victims have suffered a financial loss as a result of a crime, they have the right to seek restitution from the offender, and we help to facilitate that process. Other financial assistance is also available depending on circumstances. We also provide information to victims about victim impact statements. This is a way for victims of crime to express in writing to a judge how being a victim of crime has affected them and those close to them. If charges are laid and if the accused person is found guilty, the victim impact statement will be considered by the judge during sentencing. Cardston Victim Services is funded through a yearly grant application to Alberta Justice and Solicitor General, who authorizes funding for all criminal code violent crime, such as homicide, sexual assault, assault with a weapon, robbery, child abuse, and unlawful confinement, as well as all criminal code non-violent crime, such as theft, fraud, online fraud, or break and enter. However, currently, Alberta Justice and Solicitor General does not provide funding in our community and surrounding area for non-criminal code occurrences or tragedy, such as assistance at motor vehicle accidents, fire or natural disasters, sudden death or serious injury, minor injury or damage, suicide, or domestic disputes. This includes any immediate needs of victims for food, clothing, or shelter that is required. The pandemic has seriously hindered our physical involvement to assist victims. However, we have had a couple of such tragic incidences in our community over the past year, including the unfortunate incident at Wolford Park last summer, where board members and volunteers spent countless hours. We would not have been able to provide assistance except for your generous donation. It was an extremely stressful time for many less fortunate families when COVID-19 first reared its ugly head. The Cardston Victim Service Board, with help from your funding and a local donor for food, organized and distributed 80 hampers and delivered them to families in need in our community and surrounding area. Another initiative was undertaken during this time to purchase material and have masks made and distributed to our vulnerable local seniors. Basic training for victim service staff is mandated and paid for by Alberta Justice and Solicitor General. Such topics include crisis intervention, advocate safety, and the criminal justice system. However, ongoing and additional training is vital to what we do, and there are numerous conferences and workshops offered in the province that need additional funding from outside sources, such as yours. Last year, the program manager and volunteers spent 296 hours combined in various types of training. Examples of conferences and workshops we attend include critical incident stress, grief and healing, Indigenous workshops, child court accompaniment, mental health workshops, and provincial victim service conferences, just to name a few. These funds you've generously provided have been vital to our program so far and are ready for future incidences that victims of tragedy in our community can access these resources and services without delay. Thank you for your time, and we appreciate your continued support for Cardston Victim Services.
Good.
Do you have any questions for me?
Any questions from council?
Not from council, but Shannon, could you speak for just a minute, maybe to council, on the grant that you're writing now and that you're looking for some support on that?
Yes.
Can you just get them up to speed there?
We have received support over the year, and I have been informed that we have received for this year. However, we need a letter of support in our current grant for this year. So I have asked if that be written so that we can include that in our grant
So
application.
I guess for your information, Shannon, that's the council has a draft letter already in their council package that supports victim services.
Thank you, thank you.
And so presumably when we get later on in the agenda, we'll be making a recommendation to adopt that.
Perfect. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
And congratulations for taking this on.
Thank you. I wasn't planning on it, but I have really been blessed by by participating in this program, and I think it's going to, I really would love to see the success of the program in our community, and I'm just doing everything I can to work towards that, and I appreciate your support.
There is something you mentioned. You said you were looking for volunteers. How many volunteers are you looking at?
Well, we will take as many as we possibly can. I know, and especially during the pandemic, it has been hard to have volunteers because they are limited actually right now. It's not something that they're actually able to go out and physically be.
Okay. So maybe my question is for administration.
Yes.
Is it possible to advertise the need for volunteer for victim services?
Yes, and we actually have an ad out on the Facebook pages right now for volunteer advocates, and we're trying to get the word out there. It's
But because we could put it on our website.
that would be awesome.
That's Brown.
It might also be good if we could tag it onto your COVID address that you do
Right.
weekly.
Sure.
Just might be a little nice shout out if council goes ahead and supports this. And thank you for all you do.
Thank
We
you.
love and appreciate you.
Yeah, it is quite a big commitment as far as being an advocate. There's a lot of training and a commitment of hours that goes into it. It's not just something that you can, it's kind of an on-call opportunity. So we do look for specific people that have that kind of time to commit. And yeah, it's really necessary in our community, and we're always happy to have anybody join our team. So.
Maybe if you could write a little blurb for administration so that we can post it properly, because if it needs training, to allow people to make a decision
Yes,
with knowledge behind it.
yeah, I will do that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Bye.
Just email me that. Okay, thank you.
All right.
Wi-Fi is back up too for your devices.
It's back on?
Yeah.
So we have item number 5, adoption of minutes from our March 2nd CCW meeting.
I do that for you.
Okay, there's a motion from the mayor to adopt those minutes. All in favor? We have nothing in our bylaw and policy, and now we'll move on to 7 other business. Stormwater study. Jeff, you
Sure.
wanna walk us through that painfully long?
This one wasn't too bad. Not too bad.
Well, 12 storm ponds at $1 million a piece.
Yeah,
Yeah.
financially it's a little rough. I will agree with you on that. So we looked at this on a regional basis with the county. You'll see some of the infrastructure recommendations are outside of the town limits. So what this came back at was simply they broke it out by listing a number of opportunities or places that we could look to enhance our infrastructure. And then, let me get to the next one, sorry. So they listed a number of constraints and a number of opportunities. So what are the challenges of the current system in town, and also as it interacts with out of town is dealing with? What are the opportunities to fix that? And then they listed a number of ponds, like Councillor Selk mentioned, that could be located or could be all around the community. And then put a pretty basic capital dollar amount to those. So these are something that I'll first probably meet with Murray at the county and talk about those that are kind of mutually impacting and mutually beneficial for us to deal with. And then when we update the infrastructure master plan next, we'd likely incorporate most of these recommendations into the infrastructure master plan. Now, some of these I think will be development driven. So I can see a number of them that can just be what they are until there's more dense development. If you take, for example, the East Area Structure Plan, that development from 2nd Street to the bypass is not to this point, and so there's not anything pressing. Some of the others, like in the west, the land is already purchased and the design is already done for the storm pond as that development becomes more dense. So some of these things are already in the works. But it obviously is very expensive, even in their recommendations of projects P, L, N, and D, you're looking at $3.5 million just between those four.
So Jeff, when I look at those figures, I wondered, because it's something that allows for remediation to flooding, is there some grants that we can access provincially if we work with the county together?
Off the top of my head, the one that we would have accessed is the resiliency fund, which was canceled last year.
Right.
And so these are probably projects that are either A, paid for by offsite levies because they're development driven. So that's one place to do that. The second would be to have a couple of your highest priority ones, like they listed the three here, project L, N, and D.
Right.
Have them reasonably shovel ready if some kind of infrastructure funding comes around, particularly if it's related to storm remediation. But the short answer, Mayor, is no, I don't know of anything specific for this right now since resiliency is no longer. But I think we have some good information to base some future capital planning on.
Good, thank you.
I just about choked when I saw all these prices when I read this document through, and I thought, where are we gonna get that kind of money? Then when I got down to the bottom, I saw almost $15 million. There I'm thinking, oh, I choked. You know, and then the first thing I thought was, you got this grant program cut off, that grant program cut off. We just don't have that kind of money without borrowing.
Well, and I don't want you to think that it's, there's higher priorities, but there's nothing that has to be done tomorrow. Right? They gave us their top four. One of them was simply to do a flood control study. But then there was three projects, the Highway 5 culvert to divert everything that comes from the west, and then what they're calling Pond 12 and 12A, which is, where is that one? And so that would be almost down, and again, I don't know how we do this logistically, but down by Southwest Concrete, and then out on the Blood Reserve is where the next one would be before it all went into the Lee Creek. So they saw that as another priority, which has tremendous logistical complexity to do those two. And then Pond 4, which is the old, we call it the Farrell Lake on the west on 12th Street. Now that one would, I think, be a partnership with the county because we're managing everything coming in from the west and trying to divert it south versus coming in through the storm system. So what happens now, and we've known this is a problem for a long time, our system, when we have a high rainflow, so those June rains, our storm system immediately becomes completely infiltrated, largely by all that water running down Highway 5, all that water running in through the industrial area, running in through all the way down, and it comes in and infiltrates our system. It's not all of it, but it's a huge chunk of it. And so we've had these discussions for years about diverting everything to the Lee Creek from 12th Street, so nothing comes past 12th. And that's what that Pond 4 is looking at, is somewhere we have to settle that stormwater, we have to let it drop out all of the particulates and anything else that's in it, and then pipe it to Lee Creek. And so that's a lot of the thought behind Pond 4.
And just run that down the bypass path behind my house, for example, that Pond 4 I'm looking at. Am I in the right spot?
So let me just grab it there, Councillor, so I'm not guessing. So the thought there, so they're actually looking at outfalls that go in a number of directions.
That's basically everybody.
Yeah. So, no, they're bringing it all in this case, to the creek down on the bridge. So that's where they're bringing it instead of all the way down by the intake. When we originally talked about it, sorry, I wasn't looking at the yellow lines very close. We talked about taking it all the way to down the hill past Doug Lowe's into our Lee Creek water intake.
Right.
It looks like they're suggesting basically that it would go in at the bridge, is where they would look to bypass that. So, but these are all, again, high conceptual, just looked at from a very high level, and then we start to integrate that into our long-term infrastructure plans.
I think that's since we're on this topic.
Yeah.
Who's responsible for keeping that drainage ditch behind me clear?
So that's, is that the province, because it's,
I don't know off the top of my head, Councillor, good question. I'm not
it should have
sure.
been a bad spot, they need to keep it cleared off, because that backs a lot of stuff up, right?
Yeah,
So that's something we could look at, I think it's provincial responsibility, because that's our highway, but
okay.
I'll ask them.
Yeah, ask your son-in-law, see what he thinks. So any other questions? I really just wanted it for your information, and again, we'll start to integrate it into that long-term capital. All right.
Okay, Jeff.
Just one quick comment. I remember back, I don't know how many years ago, was it when they were first developing the land there on the golf course, and they hit a spring there,
Okay.
a big one, and it gushed down that valley down 9th, and I was shocked how much water was going down there. Can't imagine, all that going down from the outfall, if that's the way it was rerouted in a real big event, because that was a lot of water just from a spring that was.
Yeah, I couldn't speak to that. I don't know.
Oh man, I remember watching them and thinking, holy mackerel, there was a lot of water going down there. And this would be even more. So, anyways.
Right.
Okay.
Jeff, you wanna step us for the trade border study too?
I didn't think I had much to say on this one, Councillor. So the trade corridor study, you'll recall the genesis of this. In your package, I put the initial proposal from Associated. I took their fee structure page off the last because this is an open meeting. I put some of the intermediate correspondence and then the final report. So I think there's also some printouts on your desk from Councillor Selk. He has some concerns about the report. And for me, I met with Councillor Selk this morning, and our discussion was, I understand the basis of his concerns, and if you as a collective wish for me to push back harder on some of these things to try and get this tweaked and where it needs to be before the end, that's what we'll do. At this point, it's been Councillor Selk and I really kind of moving forward with this thing, and I thought it would be good if we could just have a general discussion about those concerns and make sure that we're on side to work with AE to see if we can get some data that Councillor Selk particularly thinks is missing or it makes us a little bit incomplete. Councillor Selk's met with them. I've met with them since then. I don't know that they've said that they're not going to do anything. They feel that they've delivered largely on the deliverables they proposed originally. But potentially didn't give enough information that we can move forward with the next steps with this study in hand. So we just need to work through a couple of those things tonight, and then we'll proceed to negotiate with them with whatever the political appetite is. The other thing I did mention, I do believe knowing Daryl and Judy, they would, if we needed to have them attend and speak to a couple of things, if we can't find resolve, I'm sure they'd be willing to do that. But I think they're a good outfit, a good organization. I think we work with them. So I just wanted Councillor Selk to be able to speak to where he sees some shortcomings, and then just all be on the same page with how it moves forward.
Could I say something? Councillor Selk, first of all, I want to thank you publicly for the incredible amount of work and analysis you did of that document. I read it, but in reading this, I can totally agree that to me the glaring problem was the lack of citation of sources. And you mentioned that in your article. And there are some other things. You were talking about all the information based on the Waterton data. And I think you have a strong point there. I don't know how we address that with them. Honestly, I don't know. But also the fact that you were talking about the truckers. The trucker industry never really was consulted sufficiently to be able to get their input. To me, those were definitely points that were important that maybe we should see or revisit with them. But I would appreciate seeing them come to Zoom or in person to kind of address our issues, because I'd like to hear, I mean, if you could list half a dozen or less than of what you really feel you would like to see improved, maybe even as much as I can.
Okay. Councillor Lawrence?
I'd just like to kind of echo the mayor, reading over all this, I'm thinking, yeah, there's just, there's all kinds of comments, but no source for the information. And, anybody can put out an analysis, but unless they take the due diligence and give you the source, it doesn't mean nothing at all. And you've worked really hard, and I appreciate that. I appreciated all you've done in the past 3 years. You've worked hard on this. And I want to just say thank you, and thank you for the questions, because it really makes it, it's glaring that there's no sources. And that's a big concern to me. And all of us, I'm sure.
Okay. I'll just sort of sum up. I mean, I know I probably went overboard, but I'll sum it up in probably 3 things, and that's one, did we get what we paid for? 2, I think there's some things in here, like they say in their opening paragraph that we asked them to address 3 things: tourism, commercial vehicles, and the First Nations connection with the Blackfeet tribe. I would suggest that they didn't meet any of those 3. The tourism one, they were, as far as I'm concerned, they were kind of off base in their assumption, because they had connected everything with Waterton. And just so happens I know a couple things about Carly and the traffic that goes through there. And the traffic that's going through Carly is not going to Waterton. You'd be more than likely to get someone going to Alaska than you would be to Waterton. So that assumption is kind of off base. The commercial vehicle one, you can see what I said there. I have a hard time with basic geography, and maybe I'm just simple-minded or something, but I always thought that the shortest distance between 2 points was a straight line. And that was the whole purpose behind this, is that it's a straight line from Calgary to the United States and to the I-15, not swinging all the way around to Highway 4 and then getting on the I-15. And then lastly, they're addressing this thing that we talked about with respect to First Nations, and they summed it all up in about 4 paragraphs that basically said, yeah, that's really hard to measure, and we couldn't measure it, so yeah, sorry. So I guess where this goes from here is, if there is enough goodwill around the table to maybe have Jeff talk to Associated and say, we feel collectively that we've come up short what we were anticipating from the study. I think that's kind of the next step.
I would just send this to them, say, this is what we see after you.
Well, that,
I have sent a lot.
Yeah, they've seen much of that.
And crickets was their reply, just so you know.
would it be possible for them to come out through Zoom so that or in person? Where are they based?
Lethbridge, Judy and Daryl are at Lethbridge.
Okay.
So the answer is, of course, yes. I think I saw a lot of head nods, and yes, let's push this a little bit. What I told Councillor Selk earlier, and I think we were in agreement, is if I can go back to them and say, look, this isn't just Councillor Selk, right?
It's not the grumpy old guy.
Yeah, it's not the really grumpy one. It's collectively there's a concern there, right? And so, because they've got to know Councillor Selk well throughout the process, and it's been fun. We've had good meetings, we've had a good process, but I think what I said is, I think the reason I wanted to come to council is if I can go back and say, my council collectively agrees that we have some gaps to fill. So what can you do for us? And if the answer is, Mayor, maybe we still can't get there, then I think it's, well, then we need you to come to the table and defend the study. And come and explain maybe why we can't get there. Maybe there's some really good reasons why we can't get there. I don't think in those 3 items you mentioned, Councillor, I think there's some additional data we can find. So that's why I wanted it to come here, is that if there is collective desire, then I'll go back and say I have all of my council to support looking at this a little harder.
Councillor Brown?
But it would have been smarter, not necessarily smarter is the right word, but I would have appreciated it more if they said, we just don't have the numbers to support this, or we just haven't, rather than this and this and this, it just feels like there's not enough backup. And especially that they're not, maybe they are willing to back up their words for sure, but it just feels a little open-ended.
Yeah, I think the desire there is to make it right and to back it up. I think
Right.
that's okay.
Right.
These are always difficult too, right? Because between even Councillor Selk and I, we had a different expectation of what was coming out on the end of this. Right? We were expecting very different specific things to come of it. And so were the people that authored it. And so I think we just need to get that little bit further, but I don't think it's that far. Right? We just got to push a little bit.
Yeah.
Regarding the First Nation, I totally understand what they say in the document, but it doesn't make any mention whatsoever of the meaning we had in Ontario.
I don't.
It doesn't even hint at or make allusion to it. And then they had known, or did they not know? I do not know.
I don't know if
Because there was such excitement and interest over there.
well,
And
in answer, I guess in partial answer to your question there, I did bring that up to them, and then I gave them the contact person that we've been operating through
Okay.
with all our meetings. And I said, here, this is Pat's number, if you want to call him,
Right.
he's happy to talk to you, he already knows you can call him.
okay, so those are a little bit of the gaps that I think we need to kind of address.
Okay.
I was a little surprised there was no mention at all of that meeting.
Councilor Barnes?
Yeah, I just wondered, what did we pay for this study?
So we haven't paid everything yet.
What was
The
the,
study's 49,000.
how much?
49,000.
49,000 for a bunch of information that doesn't have any backing.
Well,
That to me is like, you know, people ask me, well, what's my house worth? They want me to just grab a figure out of the air, and I tell them, well, I have to do some study. I have to compare to other houses that have sold on the market. I need to come into your house. I need to see the tax notice. I need to see what you put into that house. I have to get a lot of details, and then I do what the appraisers do, and I come up with an evaluation for that property. Well, I don't see an evaluation here. I see statements or comments that aren't backed by information. And to me, it's a cop-out for people to say, well, we couldn't find that information, and then not give any. I don't think we got value for the money that we're paying.
Mayor?
I don't know that I fully agree with that, but what I will agree, and most of us will agree, there are gaps. Let's work on those gaps.
Yeah, work on the gap,
And
sure.
let's work on the gaps, because it's still an interesting report if you read it from page 1 to the last. But I understand Councillor Selk's frustration, I totally do. And thank you for limiting it to 3 points that are more important. I thought 5 or 6. You gave us 3, that's good. But I think if administration can kind of push in that direction, I think, it's a reputable company. So let's not kind of throw them under the bus, but give them the benefit of the doubt, right?
Okay, so Jeff, I think you kind of know the.
Yeah, I just want to make sure there's some collective desire there. I will report back, hopefully even at the next meeting with where we're at, and let you know how that's going.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, item C, Old Man River Regional Services Commission. I think they never got the ACP grant either.
No.
Yeah, it's been a rough go for ACP grants this go around. That's for sure. That grant has been successful every time it's been applied for since I started working for the town.
It's true.
And you'll see in our correspondence, not to tie them together now, but our fire one was not approved, which I thought was a slam dunk as well. I thought that was a really good application and for a really good purpose, that was gonna go over very well. So what I haven't seen is who were the successful components yet. They haven't released that. So where the old ORSC is struggling is we pay as a region to get this new ortho photography done. We use that internally quite a bit. It basically is what overlays all of our streets, roads, and utilities onto the new photo, is what it is. And so what the Inland River is now saying, we can still retain the contractor and get them to do a lot of the work, but everyone's got to shell out of it. And so for your community, it's this, and I don't remember the number, but it's in your thing.
About $5,000.
Yeah, about $5,000 to do that. And so I just wanted to let you know, and maybe get a feel as to whether or not we can put it in the next iteration of the mill rate budget. We may have to debate it then. Administration, we do feel there's some benefit to having it. Brandon particularly, he's the one that would use it the most. But whenever we bring you, we put up maps all the time on the screen, and we're showing how this would integrate with that, where the utility is. That's all coming from the GIS photo. And our concern is they only do it every 5 years. And we'd have a 10-year gap in the GIS if we wait for the next one. So I wanted to bring it to your attention, and unless we'll put it in the budget and look to fund it, unless there's some real concerns around the table. Otherwise, that's what I propose we do.
So, Jeff, help me on, I'm sorry, Councillor.
Mayor.
If you have any idea of the feeling from the other communities, if they want to participate.
So when I talked to Jamie, I think we got that email the day before I did the agenda, and then I talked to him on the Thursday, and so he doesn't know that yet either.
Okay.
So everybody's having this conversation probably this week or next.
Okay, that was my question.
Oh, okay.
Then,
Yeah.
So, Council, I'm assuming we're all sort of in the same ballpark with the administration, that there's some value to this, so you should pursue that in terms of putting it in the budget.
Like I said, if we're down to the last $5,000 a month from now, well, we'll have a good debate about it. But I think we can get there. I just want to make sure you're aware. Okay.
All right. Thanks, Jeff. All right. We have business arising from the delegations. Any thoughts on Mrs. Devaney's presentation on Agenda 21?
Just a quick thought. For a lot of areas, she's not that far out. I don't want to just dismiss this as if this is just focus, because I believe our Prime Minister has mentioned a few of these things quite a few times. So I don't believe she's totally off lunch. I haven't done enough research on this to know how far this goes, how far that goes. I do know the schools, they've been pushing the One World programs and things like that. So again, I don't want to just dismiss Mrs. Devaney as the whole article, because I think there's something's going on with what she's saying there. What we can do about it, I don't know.
So what else, Councilor Barnes?
Just to reiterate, I agree with you, Tim. I've watched a lot of videos. I've heard a lot of speeches by our Prime Minister, and he's very much into the UN agenda, very much into the 2030 agenda, and he's problematic, and the whole thing is happening. And I've read what they're doing in Calgary, read what they're doing in Edmonton, and the sustainable development goals they're all out there. The information's out there. If you want to go on YouTube, you can see what the mayor of Edmonton said. The mayor of Calgary, they're on board. There's some scary stuff out there.
Yeah,
Well,
So,
you know how hard the Prime Minister pushed to get a seat on the Security Council of the UN, and failed at it.
yeah, he's fought hard to
That's
get
what
a
it's
seat.
all
He
this
got
about.
voted down, didn't he?
I guess all I can say is, all of those people who want to leave Edmonton and Calgary and move to our fine town, we would welcome them with open arms.
Yep.
The only thing I can say, it's important, it behooves us all on council and as citizens to get informed.
Be informed. It's
And
great information.
that's a duty we all have.
I don't think that Mrs. Devaney had nearly the time she was hoping for, so if there's questions or concerns that you have, I would recommend that you contact her, and I'm sure she's happy to share that information. Okay. All right. Mrs. Powelson and Victim Services, I don't want to be too,
So when Dennis.
Kellyanne.
Yeah, so when Kellyanne came, it was your council at the time, you basically have an annual support for them that we have in the next 3-year operating budget. And so I think that's, unless you change that at budget time, that should be secure for them. We did do a very simple draft for their grant. If you want to make a recommendation to council to approve that, we'll have the final for signature next week. Or if you'd like something else, we can look at that too.
Go ahead.
Councillor Brown?
I was just gonna say, do you want the recommendation now?
Yeah, you can do a recommendation. We'll get it all formalized and we'll have it ready for signature at the next meeting.
Yeah, I didn't see the letter in
It's here.
my
It's in
packet.
there.
Yeah,
Your
just-
backgrounder.
It's in the background of there. Well, it's actually with
Victim
Shannon's information.
Well,
Oh, okay.
it's just the big paper package you have here.
That's what page
Just
number
leave
is.
it.
Put the 5th page in.
Where's your tab on there, yes?
Oh, I see, okay, I just missed it. Yeah, okay, sorry.
Do you see it?
Yeah.
Just right there.
Yeah.
All right, so Councillor Brown, if you could please.
Yeah, can I make a motion that we send the letter on behalf of town council to support the Cardston Victim Services in their grant?
I think we need to make a
It is a recommendation.
recommendation.
Clearly, it's a
Yeah.
recommendation.
Okay, so we have a recommendation from Councillor Brown, all in favor? There you go. Okay, questions? Actually, Jeff, I did have one question. We all got reminded about the AUMA Leadership Caucus.
Oh, yeah.
So we're just wondering if we've been registered for that.
Look at Jill here.
Okay, okay, so.
I think it
Money
was,
bags
but there
over
was
there.
2 of you who weren't, I thought.
When is it?
April
It's,
14th, 15th,
14th.
16th.
Yes.
Yeah.
There was 5 of us that said we were,
Yeah.
wanted to be.
14 is in the afternoon, Councillor, 3 to 6.
Yeah.
3 to 6, and then
So
9 to noon.
Yeah.
So just for administration's benefit, how many again were interested in?
Councillor Bengry, you're in, okay.
Yeah.
Jill,
So
do you
6 of us
remember,
now then.
7.
remember what we did there? What you did there?
Everyone but Councillor
Okay,
Court,
we'll
he's
look at
busy
the morning. I
now.
thought we
I'm trying to
made,
figure out what my
I think
calendar
we
is
didn't
right now.
register Councillor Court, and I wasn't sure about you, Councillor Drew.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, you're in? All right, we'll check all
I'll
that.
check my calendar real fast here.
So
That's
administration
his
will take care of
14th,
all of
15th,
that.
16th?
Yeah.
In the afternoon.
Now, item 9, we have
That should be
a
the agenda.
letter, Jeff, from the Honorable Rick McIver from
Yeah.
Paris.
Where is that letter, Jeff, because I don't have it in my packet.
Good question.
Cyberspace.
Where is it?
I'm not sure that it's in any, what,
It's in here.
it's not. in
11A, I
any-
got it.
Perhaps, Jeff, you could give us the Reader's Digest condensed version.
Yeah, we applied for the fire, the ACP grant to do the fire governance review on a regional level, and that was declined.
It's
So,
unbelievable.
yeah, I was quite surprised. You mind if I just share what I talked to you about this morning, Councillor? So it was the town, the county, the villages, and McGrath. And the intent was to bring in a consultant who's expert in the fire industry to review our governance and policy environment for each of our respective fire departments. We know that's something in the Cardston one we're lacking a little bit because we're kind of operating on a bit of a unique type of authority system, although we learned we should never call it that, Councillor Selk, do you recall?
It's a
Councillor
service.
Court?
It's a
Yeah,
service.
yeah, it's a service. So fine.
I don't see it.
It further illustrates the need for the governance to be shored up there. So JD had applied for this and worked with all the communities to get this process going, has selected a suitable contractor. We really felt highly that we were getting that grant, it didn't come through. So, and JD, correct me if I tell any stories out of school here, we contacted the communities, the partner communities, and said, okay, if we don't get the ACP grant, what's the feeling about we go ahead with this with our own funding? And we get this done and we share it. So the villages were not keen on contributing, and neither was McGrath.
Neither was
so,
what?
McGrath.
I haven't got firm confirmation.
Okay, so that's not firm. But what I will probably be proposing to you next week or the week after is, you may recall that a year ago when we were doing budget, we budgeted some money for a regional fire chief.
Yes.
But we ended up not going down that road. In fact, I think the mayor and I were in that meeting when the idea got canned right at mill rate time.
That's right.
That it was decided that the other communities didn't want to go ahead with it, and that in hindsight, that was okay. So we taxed for that money last year, and so we will have that as a surplus this year. And we're going to look at bringing forward a proposal to take some of that you taxed for last year to fund just between the town and county, if McGrath is out, and we respect if they are, to look at the governance and policy environment between the town and county and the service we currently provide. So that's something we'll look to bring to you. And do you remember, JD, roughly what that dollar amount would be?
It was 29.5. Just over.
Yeah, so about under 30 total, so about 15 potentially, or maybe we'd split it with county 60-40 or some non-arbitrary number like that. We can look at that. But we haven't had that conversation. The county seemed very much like they would be willing to, because they budgeted for the fire chief as well.
Yeah.
So they seem very much open to using some of that funding to get this done. I think it's an important thing we need to look at doing. But we'll bring that forward to you in the budget as well once all the numbers are settled.
I'm still shocked that we didn't get an ACP
I-
for a regional
I know.
fire study.
I know. We got it for the stormwater study, we got it for the water study, we got it for the intern, we got it for, we've been very successful in our ACP grants in the past, but this one seems like, I don't remember at the budget how much that program was reduced. I just don't recall.
Yeah.
So, Jeff, sometime when you have an application that's rejected, that kind of give us a hint why it was rejected? Is that possible to try to understand? Is that just simply
Oversubscribed.
because of
Give me 1 second.
oversubscribed? Or is that possibly because it doesn't fit what they were looking for this year?
It was a good fit. I think it hit all the right marks here.
It was an excellent application also.
So he's so humbly submitting.
Councillor, I want to give JD a pat on the back.
It's a COVID pat, there you go.
Well, you know, even sometimes what's excellent is not even appreciated.
I have it right here, so just let me tell you what it says.
I just find it amazing that we have multiple municipalities wanting to work together to gain efficiencies, and they don't want to grant that.
It's just saying the program received a significant number of applications, which could not all be accommodated within the
Okay.
current funding.
So
So
oversubscribed.
oversubscribed.
Yeah,
Okay, well, fair enough,
All right.
fair
Well,
enough.
so
we
we'll,
have no confidential items. Jeff, do you have anything else?
I have one question.
Councillor Barnes?
Regarding the letter for requesting the extension of
oh,
the.
yep, I can give a quick report on that, Johnson. So I sent that off the day after our special meeting. I got a call on Thursday from Michael Scheidel. He's the conflict resolution man for municipal affairs. We confirmed everything was submitted. So that's all good. I believe the minister hasn't sent us a formal answer, but he said everything, it looks in order. I sent the resolution council made about adopting everything with the exception of the library. I sent that to the county so they're aware, and I've instructed RMRF to proceed with the notice. So
Okay.
that's where that's all at.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mayor, did you have a?
Yeah, I have a motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
And congrats, man. You never done it so good.